Hey guys, welcome to 3 and Out. You can check out the podcast below in the description. And here's what I need you to do. Make sure you subscribe to the Volumes YouTube channel to stay up to date to everything we're doing here on 3 and Out and the Volume. Sean Mcvay is clearly, and rightfully so, obsessed with veteran players. He has had the majority of his success with guys. They have drafted well in the later rounds. They are not just a team of stars everywhere. They have a lot of guys that if you just listed their name to the casual sports fan, they would have no clue. Now, when you talk about the Rams, you think, the Aaron Donalds, the Jalen Ramseys, the Matt Staffords, the, Todd Gurley's, who ironically was drafted by them. But, just over the duration of his tenure there, a lot of star players at the top. I think he knows he is clearly just... listen, Bobby Wagner's a free agent, so they didn't have to give up any capital to get him. And Sean McVay, being the offensive coordinator, has gone up against Bobby Wagner for 5+ years, right? Twice a season playing Seattle, so 10+ games of playing the guys. But, money to him and clearly that organization is irrelevant. They will spend whatever it costs to acquire any player. Everyone abides by the same rules in the NFL, right? Everyone has the same salary cap space. In terms of the amount of cap space, every team falls under the same, that same number. It's how you choose to invest your resources. And the Rams have shown over and over and over again that they are willing to pay premiums for veteran players, whether that be like buying a guy like Bobby Wagner or Allen Robinson, or whether that be trading for a guy like Jalen Ramsey. They will do whatever it takes. And listen, I know people, I live in 49er land, people get jealous because when you operate like the Yankees and it works, there is no way around it. The Rams' philosophy of being aggressive with veteran players through trades, through acquisitions of buying them, has been very successful. It honestly couldn't be much more successful unless they had multiple Super Bowls. They've been to multiple Super Bowls. They've won one. They go to the playoffs every freaking year. They've set the bar now. And listen, Tampa did the same thing once they got Tom Brady of being very aggressive. Like the philosophical idea of building slow, being prudent, using your picks, they've gone the complete other way. And they put a lot of pressure on their 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks, and they've hit on some of them. But the reason they've won is because they've been aggressive with acquiring high-end veteran talent. And as someone ultimately the goal of the sport is to win football games. And they've accomplished that goal consistently year in, year out. Beside Belichick and Brady and maybe Andy and Mahomes these last 3 or 4 years, nobody's Super Bowl or bust. The majority of franchises are just glad to be in the playoffs. If you win playoff games, that's a big deal, right? Do you know how many teams would just throw a party to win one playoff game? When's the last time, the Raiders haven't won a playoff game in 20 years? When's the last time the Lions won a playoff game? The Houston Texans? You just go around. The Indianapolis Colts? Do you know what they would have done to be in the playoffs? Just in the playoffs this year? I think sometimes it's Super Bowl. Yeah, the goal is a Super Bowl. The goal is to be worth $100 million. But you're not a failure if you accumulate $30 million, right? If you just make the playoffs, that's a big deal. Now, you could argue it's never been easier to make the playoffs, 7 seeds. But, come on. Look at Michigan last year. They had an incredibly successful season. They beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and they won the Big Ten. Yeah, they got smashed by Georgia, but they made the playoffs. I'm sorry, that's a big freaking deal for a program that hadn't sniffed the playoffs in a while. They'd been getting their brains beat in by Ohio State. Not everyone operates on the same wavelength. And I think the Rams have just kind of proven and made people think there are multiple ways to do something. And I was thinking about it this weekend because right now we don't know if Tiger Woods is going to play in the Masters or not. It sure looks like he's going to. If you follow on social media, he's smiling, he's playing practice rounds. There is no one in team sports that is bigger than the sport. LeBron, let's face it, is kind of irrelevant now. He's been very relevant the majority of his career, but most people I know, not on Twitter, but in society, you couldn't pay them to watch LeBron play basketball on television, to get in front of their TV and watch him play. They're just not doing it. Now, they would have maybe 6-7 years ago. Like, to me, his star has greatly diminished. He's still good, but in terms of his ability to move the needle, it's not the same. And part of that, he's been playing 17, 18 years. We're just kind of tired of him. But if LeBron retired tomorrow, like, the NBA would go on. Tom Brady literally did retire. And obviously it would have been a blow for the NFL, but the NFL would have been fine. Like, they might, Tampa Bay, they would have had to move them off the primetime games. They just would have put someone else in the primetime games. Tom Brady is Tom Brady's the best quarterback ever, and LeBron James is probably the second best player in NBA history. And if you remove both of those guys tomorrow from their sports, like, in a couple years, we wouldn't even notice. Now, I'm not saying we wouldn't talk about them. They haven't had remarkable careers, and they haven't printed money as, members of their business. They've been huge parts of the cash generation. But neither is bigger in football or basketball. That's just a fact. There is no baseball player who's even remotely close to as big as the sport. I mean, when I was a kid, there were players that, I don't know if they were as big as baseball, but they were damn close. Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, Cal Ripken Jr., these guys were rock stars, and baseball overall was still bigger than them. Tiger Woods is the one current athlete he's bigger than golf. And listen, I'm biased. I love golf. I watched way too much of the Valero Texas Open, but it's not even close. You could combine the top 20 players right now in the world, and it's loaded with high-end young talent, and all combined, they don't equal Tiger Woods. And it's kind of cool. Like, Michael Jordan, to me, was the last athlete like this. Like, Michael Jordan, in his heyday in the mid-'90s, was bigger than the sport of basketball. And there hasn't been anyone in any sport since, beside Tiger Woods, who can make that claim. So if and when he's playing this weekend, he's going to play Thursday and Friday for sure. He's never missed the cut, so I'm assuming he's going to play this weekend. It's as big as it gets. Because even Augusta, the Masters, which is the biggest golf tournament of the year, and really, even if you're not a big golf fan, it cuts through the noise. It's one of the biggest events of the year. Like, I'm not a race guy, but I know the Daytona 500 is pretty big. If you're not a basketball guy, the NCAA tournament's pretty important. If you're not a horse racing guy, the Kentucky Derby is a pretty big deal. Like, there are certain events in this country, if you're just alive, that matter. And the Masters is one of them, right? But ultimately, if Tiger plays, for as big as the Masters is, Tiger's even bigger than the Masters. Tiger's clearly bigger than the PGA Tour, and he is an all-time needle mover. And I don't think we've seen a guy, because I've said over and over, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson of the NFL. Now, unlike Larry and Magic, who saved a dying brand of the NBA in the late 70s and made it culturally relevant, helped David Stern take the league and print cash into Michael Jordan, the NFL was already rolling. They, and Roger Goodell, and just the mindset of football went to another level. But they rode the backs of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in that rivalry, because those were the two biggest stars in the league. They played each other for a decade and a half, and the league followed their lead. And the league was still bigger than those two individuals. So I just think I saw Rory. Listen, was it his own fault that he got in the car accident? Who knows? The details. Tiger is somehow, like, no one can circumvent things that, like, well, what really happened? And no one truly knows. Like, he was going 80 miles an hour down a hill, never touched the brakes. Bizarre situation. But I say this all the time. I know someone through secondhand that knew a firefighter that arrived on the scene and just said there were bones everywhere. So 14 months later, to be able to compete in the Masters is just an incredible accomplishment. Again, when he does not need to do this. But I'm glad he's doing this, because, and as sports fans, everyone should be glad, because it really matters, because he's that big of a star. And in a day and age where we talk a lot about stars, and listen, like I said, Tom Brady, LeBron James, Steph Curry, these guys are stars, right? Rafael Nadal, they don't sniff the star of Tiger Woods. I don't even think it's close in terms of just needle moved. So I'm excited. Again, he's never missed the cut at the Masters. So if you can get him plus odds to make the cut, it's pretty good bet. And last but not least, and we'll get more into Tiger and the Masters on Go Low Pod on Wednesday, Dan Snyder, who I don't remember an owner in pro sports under as much just heat. Where I live in the Bay Area, a lot of people talk shit about the A's owner. He's traded his whole team, but he's been doing this for years, decades. I mean, this is just, to me, they just need to move to Vegas. But, obviously, every individual owner, hell, I see on social media people hammering Hal and Hank Steinbrenner, right? Because they're not his dad. They've kind of gone cheap, even though their payroll's $250 million. James Dolan, you can nitpick the good owners, the bad owners. Owners always take a lot of heat. It's just a nature of the business. But there feels a level of venom and a coordinated effort to take out Dan Snyder unlike anything I've seen. A report that either came out Saturday or maybe Friday afternoon was the way the NFL works is it's all a revenue share. It's why when everyone freaked out about Calvin Ridley, the hypocrisy of not letting Calvin Ridley gamble even though you're in bed with the gambling companies. Yeah, they split that revenue with the players. They're in this thing called a revenue share. It's when every dollar that comes in, you don't keep that whole dollar. You split that with whoever you're splitting the revenue with. And in the NFL's case, you split that with the players. So being in bed with the gambling companies is profitable for the players as well as the teams. So the Calvin Ridley thing was because they can't have players gambling on the sport. That would make things very, very hairy, right? But it's not because they're trying to screw over the players. The players are benefiting from their deals with all these gambling companies. Literally, money in their pocket. But the Dan Snyder thing, maybe I knew this, but I didn't think that much of it, is that when you sell out, if you're the Washington football team or the Commanders or whatever the hell their name is, or the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, you send 40% of that revenue is split with the players, right? And then it's distributed throughout, I guess it's split with the league, and then I don't know exactly the details of how everything's split. I just know the players get a piece of that. And it was reported by Front Office Sports that, they are being investigated, not by the league. Obviously, the league already did that and claimed nothing happened, by the U.S. government. And someone told the U.S. government, some committee, the government, they got a million fucking committees, that Dan Snyder skimmed off the top of the 40% that he was supposed to give to the league that then they redistribute, right? That he was not giving the actual amount of money. And listen, the way white-collar crime works, right? Sometimes white-collar crime is not just Bernie Madoff running a Ponzi scheme and pocketing all the money. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm in a partnership, a 50-50 split, but I'm actually keeping 70 of it, right? That is illegal if you are in a partnership and a contract that is binding, right? Which Dan Snyder definitely is in one. So there are reports basically saying, and listen, I'm not some lawyer, I'm just a state school guy who likes following this stuff, who likes a good television show surrounding law. But I don't know how all this stuff works in terms of the legalities to kick him out of the league, how he can fight back. But I do know, because I saw PFT wrote, if this is true, he's in major trouble, as in adios. And it's been clear for a long time that the league desperately wants to kick him out of the league. That's not even arguable at this point. He's had minority owners going after him on his own, that he owns the team with. Clearly the league is kind of in a tough spot. It felt like they also wanted that, but then kind of protected him in the email scheme because John Gruden was the only guy that got taken out. But the bullets have not stopped coming. And it feels like the majority of the last decade, he's had on a bulletproof vest and avoided being taken out. Well, this one might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Because if he was skimping off the top and they can prove that he knows it, to me, that's the easiest way to kick him out of the league. And let's face it, they want Jeff Bezos to own this team. And people are like, Jeff Bezos could own the Broncos. What if he doesn't want to own the Broncos? He owns the Washington Post. He clearly, in this weird way, wants to have a bunch of influence in that city politically, right? Because eventually they're going to come after his business. This is too powerful. He's making too much money. If he can set up roots there, he already owns the paper. He owns the team. He'll basically just be essentially a Congress member. And he wants it. They know he wants it. They want to be in business with him. And they're going to try it. To me, I think Dan Snyder is going to get kicked out eventually. I don't know if this is going to be the reason, but it's just been one thing after another. One leak after another. There are too many people actively going after him. And he clearly has done a lot of shady stuff to make it possible. Like, if you haven't done anything shady, even if you hated me for whatever reason, you wouldn't be able to take me out. But this guy does shady stuff, and there's a lot of people that want to take him out, which includes, it feels like, prominent power brokers within the league to then place Jeff Bezos. And listen, they're already in business with Amazon for this Thursday night game. Like I've said, Amazon is in this business to just be in the NFL business. They don't care the ratings. They're not in the advertising business. This is just a line item to them. Whether 10 people watch Thursday Night Football or 10 million watch Thursday Night Football, Jeff Bezos ain't losing a minute of sleep. Hell, I don't even know if the guy likes football, but I do believe that Jeff Bezos is going to be eventually the next owner of the Washington Commandos football team, whatever you want to call them. Thanks for watching 3 and Out. You can check out the podcast below in the description, and make sure you subscribe right now to the Volumes YouTube channel.